Hope to get everybody out at a good hour. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes for January 21st, 2021.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion on those minutes that we need to bring up? Any additions, deletions, anything, any concerns? Is someone speaking, or is that just background noise?
I think that's background noise.
Okay. Well, I'll call for a vote then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Let's.
I thought I'm not second it.
Okay. Somebody needs to mute their button unless they're going to be talking here. We'd like to open the time for a presentation by GRS, Actuarial Valuations and Assumptions, and also GASB report, if we could have that now.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Lance Weiss, and I'm joined by Josh Murner. We're with Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company, known as GRS, and we're here to present the results of both the funding actuarial valuation as well as the GASB accounting valuation. And then we wanted to discuss with you several recommendations that we have for changes in actuarial assumptions. So to begin, if everybody has a copy of this presentation, I know Beverly said she can't share it, but if you've got that, if you could just turn to page 2, it's the agenda. And just to give you a quick synopsis of what we're going to discuss today. So we're going to go over, what's the purpose of evaluation. We'll discuss real briefly any changes from last year, which there are none. I'll tell you that up front. We'll talk about the key actuarial valuation assumptions. We'll just review briefly the current actuarial funding policy that you all have adopted to fund the plan. We'll present the results of both the funding valuation as well as the, and then we'll compare those results to the accounting, the GASB 6768 accounting valuation results. We've got a real quick short member reconciliation, and then we'll get into recommendations regarding changes to the actuarial assumptions. So if you could all turn your presentation to page 3, and at this point I'm going to turn it over to Josh, who will start the discussion.
Hello, I hope everyone is doing well and that everyone can hear me.
We're excited to hear from you.
Good. So on page 3, we're just kind of going over the purpose of the funding actuarial valuation and the purpose of the GASB valuations that we provide to you. So the funding valuation that we provide develops your funding requirement, basically the dollar contribution amount to be made from July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2022. And it's also just to determine the funded status as of July 1, 2020. And then in addition, we provide you with the GASB valuation, which is just reporting and disclosure requirements. So if you could flip to slide 4, just a quick overview that comparing the July 1, 2019 valuation and the July 1, 2020 valuation, there have been no changes in assumptions, methods, or provisions. Going to slide 5, just a quick overview of some of the key valuation assumptions. Currently, your investment return rate is 7%. Your mortality assumption uses the RP 2014 mortality table and then uses generational mortality improvements with the MP 2015 table. In addition, all members are assumed to increase their salaries every year by 4%. And then finally, we do have some other demographic assumptions, such as assumed rates of retirement, disability, and termination. Assuming there have been no questions so far, we can turn to slide 6. And so slide 6 just goes over your current funding policy. And so you currently have a contribution rate that is the normal cost of the plan each year. And then in addition to the normal cost, you contribute an amortization of the unfunded liability. And that amortization consists of an amortization period that was 25 years starting July 1, 2011. And so now as of July 1, 2020, there are 16 years remaining on that amortization period. In addition, we assume that the amortization period consists of level dollar payments compared to a level percentage of pay. And if all actuarial assumptions are met, you will reach 100% funded in approximately 16 years. And the contribution for amortizing the unfunded liability is expected to remain level as a dollar amount because we assume those level dollar payments. And assuming that your payroll increases, that would decrease your contribution as a percentage of payroll. So long as there are no questions, we can continue on to slide 7. So slide 7 starts to go into some more specific results for your plan as of July 1, 2020, and compares it to the previous year, 2019. So the key numbers from this slide are really your funded ratio improved, which is always a good thing. It improved from about 80.5% to 81.3%. And then in addition, your contribution amount is also a pretty important number from this slide. So that did increase. It went from about 2.36 million to 2.42 million. So a slight increase in your contribution rate as a dollar amount, as well as a percentage of pay amount. On to slide 8, we show a little bit more detail about how we developed your contribution rate. And so your normal cost rate went up a little, as well as your amortization of the unfunded liability. So it was 7.21% was the normal cost rate for July 1, 2020, and 9.46% was the amortization of the unfunded liability. If you combine those two, we get the total employer contribution rate of 16.67%. And then if you multiply that by the estimated payroll, we get the 2,418,881 for your contribution from July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2022. If there are no questions, we can continue on to slide 9. So slide 9 just goes even more into detail about kind of what happened from 2019 to 2020. So your 2019 contribution rate was 15.98%. We expected it to go down to 15.72%. However, as a result of a couple of different categories experiencing losses, it increased to 16.67%. And so those categories were the recognition of asset losses increased your contribution rate by 0.65%. That can kind of be seen because your assets earned approximately 3.52% on market value and 5.33% on actuarial value. And we had assumed that they would earn 7%. So because that amount is lower than what we assumed, it's recognized as a loss, and it increases your contribution rate slightly. In addition, we also saw that salaries were a little bit higher than we had expected. And so that also increased your contribution rate slightly. And on slide 9, we also show the funded ratio reconciliation. So last year it was 80.56%. We expected it to go up to 81.82%. And because of the similar reasons for the contribution rate going up, we saw the funded ratio decrease compared to what we expected. And but in total, the funded ratio did increase to 81.29%, just not as high of an increase as we expected it to go. If there are no questions, we'll continue on to slide 10. And slide 10 just kind of shows a comparison of the investment return rate on market value of assets and actuarial value of assets over the past 9 years. And so a big takeaway from this slide is really just kind of looking at the annualized return over the past 9 years and the past 5 years for a little bit shorter term comparison. So we see 6.35% was the 9-year annualized return on a market value of assets. And that compares to our current assumption of 7%. And then on an actuarial value of assets base, it's at 6.63%. Other than that, this slide also shows the experience as a percent of the liabilities. And it's a relatively low number. Like, we're not seeing ginormous gains or losses in a single year. But there were years where there were losses or gains that were a pretty decent amount. But in recent years, those numbers have come down, which is always a good thing. So if there are no questions, we can
Are any of those figures unreasonable? Like the 2018 figure.
The 2018 figure.
Experienced gain loss.
Yeah, the negative 0.84.
Yeah.
No, that I wouldn't say that. Especially, I would say the larger numbers are down towards 2014 and 2015. Those were pretty large gains. But for example, 2014, there was a pretty large gain, but at the same time, you also had a pretty large investment return for those years of 14.05%, compared to I believe the assumption was 7.25% back in 2014. So you were almost double with the investment return rate. So that would lead to you having such a large gain. I'm not sure if Lance has any opinion on whether those numbers are too large or too small, or.
I agree. I agree with Josh. I think they're definitely, in the range of reasonableness. They're showing that, on an overall total basis, the assumptions are reasonable. market conditions continue to change, and we'll talk about that, as we get further into this presentation, where we do have some recommendations for changes. But no, I don't think they're unreasonable at all.
Okay.
They're all less than 5% of the liability. So, that's kind of where I, look much closer if it's over 5%, but the last few years, 0.44%, 0.37%, 0.84%, they're pretty small. But again, and I think more, informative is the fact that, and Josh mentioned this, that, our assumption is 7% in terms of, what we expect the assets to return. And you can see that over both, the 9-year and the 5 years, you haven't hit that 7%. Either on market value or actuarial value. And actuarial value, you've probably heard us talk about this. That's the smoothed value of assets, where we smooth out fluctuations in market value over 5 years. So that's really the takeaway from this page.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. If we could turn to page 11, and I'll pick it up here. And so, we've got 2 columns here, 2 columns of results. These results are all as of June 30, 2020. Josh hit the first column, which are the funding results. So this is, the 81.29% funded ratio, and the contribution, actually determined contribution, the estimate of 2.418 million. Those are funding. Josh has already talked about that. Accounting is slightly different. Accounting uses the GASB rules, the Government Accounting Standards Board's rules, which are slightly different. For example, under the GASB rules, you have to use market value of assets. You're not allowed to use a smooth value. So you can see that, at the 3rd row up here, where asset value. For funding, we're using actuarial value or a smooth value. For accounting, we have to use market. So you can see some differences here. The funding, because the market value is less than the actuarial value, that means your funded ratio, the ratio of assets to liabilities, is going to be smaller for accounting results. The major difference, though, is in what we call the actuarially determined contribution, the 2418881, which is your funding requirement, as compared to what accounting looks at as the cost, the total cost. And that's 3,188,313. And again, this 3 million figure, though, is only for accounting. It's only for reporting and disclosure. It has nothing to do with funding. Several years ago, these rules changed dramatically, and GASB decided to divorce themselves from funding, came up with their own rules. So real quickly on page 12, page 12 is just the derivation, the development of this 3,188,000, and it's just different. It's just different than funding. It's not necessarily equal to normal cost plus amortization of the unfunded. The GASB came up with their own rules. So
let me ask you, what is included under items 1?
Ooh, there's some feedback. I'm not able to.
Can we put our mics on mute, please, folks? Unless we're going to talk. There's a lot of feedback. I'm just asking what's comprised. Does the service cost underline item 1? What's included in that?
That's basically the same. That's the service cost is in effect the cost of the pension for the year. It's similar to the normal cost. It's not dissimilar. It's not that different than normal cost. It's the cost of pensions accruing during the year. But then you can see there are other components that you add to the service cost that are different than what the funding development is. So service cost is similar to normal cost. The rest of the components are different, though, as you can tell. Yep. If we turn to page 13, so 13 is just a real brief reconciliation of the members. We start with the actives, retirees, disabled, et cetera, as of July 1, 2019. And then we show you the ins and outs, and we end up with the total participants as of June 30, 2020 on the last row. So again, it's just a little bit more detail for you if you want to see, what happened to the actives. Did they go down? They did. Retirees went up a little bit, and you can just get a sense of what's happened to your population. So if we turn to page 14, so 14, what we wanted to talk about here is actuarial assumptions. And we sent a letter to you with some more information on this. But basically, actuarial assumptions are the assumptions that we make with regard to what we expect the fund will earn in the future, how the patterns of retirement, disability, turnover, death for your members. Because if we didn't have assumptions, we'd assume everyone got a benefit, down the road, and that's not true. That cost would be prohibitive. Plus, we know that that's not true. We know some people are going to quit. Some people will retire earlier or later. Some people will die, unfortunately. So, that's the assumptions we make. And we know, again, that those assumptions aren't meant to last forever. Once we set the assumptions, we know that periodically we're going to have to adjust them. And again, I guess the last comment I would make about assumptions is we know they're not going to be exact. What we're really trying to do is come up with the average assumption, and over, netting out all of the assumptions, looking at the gains and losses for all the assumptions. We hope that, again, that gets to your point of that percentage of, the gain or loss as a percentage of the accrued liability. As long as it's small, we know we would expect that, but we'd like to make it as small as possible, obviously, so that there aren't large fluctuations in your cost. So on page 14, these are observations from us. And I will tell you right up front, we don't know your plan as well as you do. You know the membership, you know how the funds are invested. You know, in terms of what type of salary increases your members are going to be given. So these are our observations from the information we're given. But again, you know your plan the best. And so that's why we'll provide our observations, our recommendations, but this is a discussion. These are by no means set in stone. We need your input. We want your input. So on page 14, we just want to mention that the Society of Actuaries, which is our research organization for the actuarial profession, they periodically issue mortality tables based on, most recent experience. And so they came up with a new table specific to public sector mortality. Previously, they only surveyed private sector plans. And so now they've decided that obviously public sector plans are huge and private sector plans in effect are going away. So they finally got their act together and did a mortality study of public sector mortality experience, which is a good thing. And so we wanted to mention that. Rates of inflation and investment return have been trending downward since 2017. We noticed that your salary increases that you've granted to your members have exceeded the current assumption of 4%. We assume that everyone will get a 4% raise. Overall, the raises have been larger than 4%.
Just a question there. The 4%, is that an annual? Yes. Does that reflect the average annual increase?
Yes, correct. That's our assumption. Yep.
And we've actually been higher than that then.
Yes. Yep. And then the last comment we make is that retiree benefits have been based on higher final average salaries than projected. And that's a result of accrued, I think it's leave that you account for when someone actually retires. You take it into account, and that's included in their final average salary. And we make an accounting for that. We assume that final average salaries will be 3% higher than what the annual salaries are to account for that. In fact, that 3% assumption is low, and we're finding that the actual salaries that are included in the final average pay are higher than the 3%. So that's our, those are our observations. We don't know if that's going to continue. And so, that's where we're coming from, this data. So if you turn to page 15, based on this data only, and again, it's our observations of what we see, but again, we want a discussion with you all. So based on our observations, we're recommending the following assumptions be changed. for the next actuarial valuation as of July 1, 2021. And we also suggest that you might want to also look at all of the assumptions. So the assumptions with regard to turnover, disability, in addition to the ones we're recommending. Josh, any others that we need to look at too?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, disability, turnover, and retirement would be the
Oh,
other.
retirement.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, right. So the first bullet on page 15 there, decrease the investment return assumption from 7 to 6.75. That gets to the point that, over the last 5 or 9 years, you have not earned the 7% assumption. Again, this is, we're not investment consultants. You're much more expert in terms of how you're investing the assets. So this is what we see, but you have to tell us if you in fact are investing the assets such that you expect to earn 7, and we'll have a discussion then. Second bullet there at the bottom, update the mortality table to this new mortality table that's based on public sector mortality experience. And then update the salary assumption. And we actually took a look at the salary experience of your members from 2016 through 2020. And so, as I said earlier, we're assuming a flat 4% raise every single year based on, age, regardless of age, I should say. We're proposing the graded schedule at the bottom of page 15. So we're proposing, and this gets to the fact that your younger employees generally get higher raises, and as you go through the age, you get older, get more experience, you're probably gonna, at a higher pay, and you're probably gonna get less as a percentage of pay. So we looked at it, and your actual experience of your membership shows that what's really happening versus our 4% assumption. And again, this is from, what'd you say, Josh, 2017 through 2020 or 2016?
2016.
2016. The experience has been that your under 30s are receiving about a 7% average raise. Those between 30 and 39 getting about 5.75. Those between 40 and 49 getting about 4.5. Those 50 to 59 are getting 4. And members 60 and above are getting about 2.5%. So instead of using this flat 4% for everyone, we're proposing this graded schedule. If you turn to page 16, we also have a couple more.
Sorry, just a question.
Oh, absolutely.
What does the mortality rate between public and private employees show? Are public employees more healthy?
Generally, yes and no. Generally, they're living longer. Generally speaking, public employees are living longer. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Which means you need more money to pay them because they're going to live longer, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So generally speaking, depending on the category of public employee, you're going to probably see that the prediction is that they're going to live longer, and it's going to raise your cost, unfortunately. But it is what it is. So, all right. So page 16, a couple more recommendations. This is kind of a technical one where we just want to update the assumed timing of retirement, turnover, and death to middle of the year. As I said, it's kind of technical. It's just what we think is a better reflection of the averaging. And then this last bullet here gets to the fact that, as I said earlier, we're assuming that final average salary, we're loading that by 3% to take into account the fact that when members actually retire, they get that accrued leave in their salary. And so what we're seeing actually, though, is that, as I mentioned earlier, that 3% is too low. And we're seeing that members retiring recently are, their final average salary, when you take into account that accrued leave, is much higher than 3%. And in fact, the load should be, and you can see the schedule, and we're proposing, again, a graded schedule. So for members who retire with less than 20 years of service, we're proposing a 5% increase. For those 2024, a 6%. I mean, this is the actual experience that we're seeing. 5%, 6%, 4% for those with 20 to 25, 7% for those with 30 to 34, And 35 to 39, we didn't see any difference in salary. But those 40 and above, we saw 13% difference. So in total, what we're recommending is that instead of a 3% load for members who have service less than 30 years at retirement, we're proposing a 5% load. And for those with 30 and above years of service, we're proposing to change the load from 3% to 8%. And those are just, based on the actual experience that we're seeing. But again, this is what we're seeing. And we want to take into account, your plan, how, what people are accruing, it better than us. And so, this is kind of a discussion. And so the last piece of information that we want to provide to you before we talk about some of these is on page 17. And this is the cost impact. And so we've run this cost impact based on the July 1, 2020 results. I'm not suggesting that you have to pay this for July 1, 2020. We're suggesting that you change your assumptions effective the following year for July 1, 2021, unless you want to, start the new assumptions earlier. But again, that's totally up to you. We're not pushing you at all. Our thought was to do it, on a prospective basis, but again, that's up to you. So if you look at page 17, it's a little messy. There's a lot of information, but what we call the baseline scenario, those are the results that Josh went through, the funding results that Josh went through with no changes to any assumptions, keeping the current assumptions. The second column there, updated assumptions without the salary change. So that's the updated assumptions, but no salary change and no change in the load for accrued liability, for accrued leave. So that's everything except salary and except the benefit load change. And so you can see if you look at estimated contribution dollar, that line there, it's about 3/4 of the way down. It's 2418881. That's the number that Josh mentioned earlier. It would go to 2748, an increase of about 329,000 if we updated the assumptions, including the mortality and the other recommendations that we had. If you go to the fourth column, all updated assumptions, that includes the salary increase. And so instead of 2748, we're now at 2812, which is about $400,000 over what it was, the 2418. And then the second to last column, that's all updated assumptions with the benefit load change. That's the load to account for accrued leave. And so it would go to 2973. And this assumes that we're going to keep the current funding policy, which is 16 years as of July 1, 2020, on a level dollar amortization basis. So it's 2418, and it could be as large as 2973, an increase of 554,000, which is not insignificant at all. It is significant. I know that. So that's kind of the basic results. Now, a couple of things that we wanted to mention is that you're as long as you meet the requirements in statute as to how you fund the plan, which you currently do, and you're funding it much faster than what's required in statute, you're all good. So one thing you might want to consider is changing the 16 years. You might want to go back to 25 years. Again, I'm just throwing some ideas out that might mitigate some of this cost increase. I mean, that's where we're coming from here, is cost mitigation, because we know it's a significant impact. We realize that. Another potential change is changing from what we call and Josh had mentioned this earlier, the level percent of, level cost, level dollar payment method to a level percent of pay method. And I'll talk about that in just one more page, just to give you an idea of what that means. But if we changed from level percent of pay, was changed to level percent of pay from level dollar, the estimated contribution, instead of the $554 million increase for all of these changes, would be 189,000. And so that's a significant decrease. And that gets to the fact that the level dollar amortization basis is more conservative, requires more money up front than the level percent of pay method. So that's a significant increase. And we also broke it out. It actually, if we change to a level percent of pay from level dollar and did not change the load for the accrued leave, actually that would only increase the cost by about $55,000. So much, much lower. So these are, again, these are all the facts. These are based on our observations. And let's talk about this a little bit. How in terms of, we could start with investment return, 7%. And this is for all of our clients. I'll be honest with you. The majority of our clients now, we're seeing a lot of very large state funds assuming a 6.75% investment return. We've got a number of our large plans going down to 6.75. And, I kind of take it that, these large funds with lots and lots of money and economies of scale are assuming 6.75. That's significant. That's significant. So, I'll kind of open it up to you to ask any questions here, talk about any of these assumptions, recommendations, but we need your input, obviously.
Comments from the board members or from the participants here.
I'll just start off. It's certainly a tremendous amount of information to digest, and I think the board is going to need some time to consider all that info and have a discussion about it.
Yeah, we're if you want to have another meeting and just kind of digest it all, as you said, we're happy to come back and have another meeting with you. And that may make more sense, to be honest. Yeah.
At least my initial reaction to the 6.75 seems to make sense given the 9-year performance numbers, but that's just an initial thought.
Other comments?
The other comment I had was the salary number, that the recommendation that you're talking about on the salaries. How was that actually determined? Is that raw data? Because I'm just thinking, I'll back up a step. The city and MUB typically provide a COLA increase of 3%, 3.5% at most annually. So I'm having a hard time understanding why you're showing a 4% or greater salary increase.
Well, it is on we're looking at the raw data. So the information that we're provided through the annual census that we collect each and every year, since, I think, Josh, you said July 1 of 2016, we looked at that data. We looked at the data July 1, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, and we're seeing those increases. So a lot of it, Josh, we're not matching employee by employee. We're looking at totals, right, from each year?
Yes, we're looking at totals from each year, and what we look at is we look at what was reported for the prior year, what we expected for the next year, and then what was reported for the next year. And so what we determined for our recommendation has to do with what was reported the prior year and then what's reported this current year. And we're seeing just some slightly higher rates when someone's younger. It is possible, because we're looking at this raw data, that say the prior year we heard someone was supposed to get 30,000, And then the next year we hear, 40,000, but say that prior year wasn't actually 30,000. And so we say, well, that increase was 40,000 divided by 30,000, but it wasn't really, say it was 38,000, and 40,000 divided by 38,000. So there's a possibility that, our numbers are due to some data errors, but based on the data that we've been given, that is what we're seeing. Slightly higher rates when someone's younger.
Now, Josh, there's a different group of people each year, right? So
correct. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we're looking at it by age. Isn't that correct, Josh? By age
Yes.
brackets. By age brackets. So July 1, 2016, there may have been 25 people between the ages of 25 and 30. The next year, when we get the data, there may be some new entrants in that group. And so it's not, we're not looking person by person by person. It's really just averages. But it is based on the raw data, exactly. And it's the data that you give us each and every year.
Lori, our finance director's joined us today. I just wanted to, just from your perspective, do you see any questions over these figures, knowing what you know about the city's trends?
They seem on point. I'm still like with Jeff there with because we only had a 2.5% increase last year on the COLA, so I guess I'm still a little unsure of that data. But also, like he said, there's just a lot of information here that I think we need to sit down and really look through before we make any type of decisions.
No, I fully understand that. And one thing I'll mention too is that the salary information we're looking at is obviously historical. It's based on the actual data that you give us each and every year, but it's historical. And so if you tell us that, going forward, you're unlikely to, be providing raises in excess of our 4% assumption, that's something that we would want to take into account.
When was the last time there was a raise given that was exceeded 4? Anybody know that has been here a while?
I don't, Kim.
Lori, do you have any idea, clue on that, or Ryan?
I can't think of anything since I've been there that's hit the 4% mark, maybe one time. And I've been there about 15 years.
So that 4% is an average that's an average to date of the types of raises the city tends to give.
Well, that was our assumption,
right,
going forward.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is that maybe it should be lower, actually.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think the city has generally gone with the CPI, hasn't it, Lori?
Yes, that's what we base our COLAs on. We may increase it a little bit more than that, but not much.
Some of it may be that, as I said earlier, you don't have the exact same number of people, the exact same people from year to year. So as you get new people in, generally speaking, they're probably getting a bigger, salary than the prior year's generation of new people. And so that also contributes to this as well.
The other question I have, Lori, is there a like a step increase? Is there a longevity increase that's tied into that in addition to the COLA that's given to employees? In other words, do we ever do any adjustments to the base salaries, which then changes all the salaries up that line? Or is it strictly based on percentage COLA based?
I believe it's based on COLA. We do give a longevity, but I think that's considered separate from the base rate. And the base rate only increases when there is a COLA given.
But I would imagine that if there were step adjustments made, that would have to be taken into account in these figures too then.
Yeah, because we're looking at total salary, not just
Yeah.
base. Yeah, we're looking at total salaries that you report to us each and every year. So it's the total.
Interesting. All right. What else do you have? Any other questions?
That's it for us. I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah, you have.
Well, as I said, we're happy to, let you mull on this, discuss it amongst yourselves, and we're happy to, attend another meeting and have some additional discussions.
Very good. Really appreciate it. I agree with that we ought to kind of table this until we've had a chance to look at it. I would suggest that members share this information with other members and get input through the system, especially those that understand financing. Let them look at it carefully and give you questions to bring back to the board, or have them come to the next meeting and let's ask those questions. When do we need to make a decision on this? Is this time sensitive?
From our perspective, no. As long as if you're going to make these changes to the assumptions for next year's valuation, sometime this summer is when you'd have to give us the final
before July 1st then.
Right.
Okay. We have some time to work on this, but yeah. Let's make a diligent effort to figure out what to the point where we understand what the figures mean. That would be great. Wonderful. What else do you have for us, Lance?
That's it. We think it's enough.
Oh, that was easy, man. I was expecting. I see. I looked at. You have 27 pages, and you've only gone through 19. I thought you had 8 more pages to go. But those are all.
No, I mean,
the
rest of the report is really just kind of the background on actuarial valuations.
Right.
And, we've been through this a number of years, so if you have questions, we're happy to discuss those on what's in the appendix. But it's basically just kind of a background on the process that we go through.
Okay. We don't need to have any action on this, but I think it would be worth, Beverly, if you want to put this item on the agenda for next month, at least give an update as to where we are as a board in reviewing this information, so that we can get back with these folks and tell them when we're going to be ready to make a decision. Does that sound fair? Tyler, you think that's okay? Good. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
We have a real exciting meeting. You can join us if you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Let's look at invoices. Beverly, do you cover that with us? Kind of go through them with us? Is Beverly there?
Beverly, are you on mute, maybe?
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Yeah. Are you going to cover the invoices? Are you going to cover the invoices for us?
Yes, I have CSM advisors. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's a quarterly advisory fee for the period ending March 31st, 2021, in the amount of $43,328.84.
Let me ask on that. So that is the fee for period 3/31. Is that to date or from 12/31, or tell me when this covers?
This covers January 1st through March 31st.
And
we
yeah, go ahead. And the function of this contract is to do what? Just for my benefit. Maybe board members can answer that.
CSM advisors, they're the ones that was on the last Zoom meeting and discussed our fundings with the stock markets, and
They do the investing for it? Are they our financial investors too?
they are.
Okay. Is this a high number or is it reasonable? Does anybody know?
This is the normal number.
By CSM, or how long have we had CSM as advisors?
Oh, I think since 1987.
My point here is this is a lot of money, right, folks? And I just want to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck. I don't know that for sure, but have we ever gone out to bid for these services? Do you remember,
Not
Jeff?
that I can.
Yeah.
Kim, my tenure on the board is a little over a year. So during that period
You're
of time,
almost as young as I am, man.
yeah. So during that period of time, we have not gone out and looked at anything to see what the competition could offer.
See, that's a lot of money, right? And I just want to make sure that we're getting that's pretty standard fees. And I don't know how we find that out. Maybe we can make some calls or even talk to State Treasury's office or something like that, Beverly, just to see kind of what is that a pretty good fee? I mean, I don't think we have to look at it being too high or too low. Just is it in the ballpark? Because they know us, and that makes there's some work to that. But this is part of a contract. I assume we have a contract with them. Ryan, do you know that?
I don't really know. I don't know if it needs renewed. It's something that's just a standing contract. I'd have to go back and look at it to see if there's like a 6.
Yeah, would you report on that next time, Beverly? See if you can do some research. I'd like to know what our relationship is with CSM, so I understand it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least at this point, if this is pretty standard, I would entertain a motion that we approve this invoice from CSM Advisors LLC in the amount of $43,328.84.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. What else, Beverly? Any other invoices?
I have 2 invoices from Dinsmore Shoal. The first one is for services rendered through December 31st, 2020 in the amount of $1,900. The second one we just received today is for services rendered through January 31st, 2021 in the amount of $2,492. Now these total 3 invoices are $6,667, and the board had a $10,000 cap on this item.
Hey, Bev, I don't have that in front of me at the moment, but I think that second invoice that came today includes the $1,900. I think it's just for an additional $500 or $600.
Oh.
Let's see if I can find it real quick.
Great catch, Jeff.
Actually, no. I'm looking at it now. That is a separate invoice for 2492. So it would be 2492 plus the 1900. That's correct.
Okay, that's correct. Does that seem, is that according to the agreement that the board had with them? Do you feel
Yeah.
good about?
Yes, it is. Yes, that'd be 4392 for those two invoices.
4392. I'll entertain a motion so we can discuss this a little further. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Second. Okay, let's have a discussion on it. I think last time that we voted on the first invoice last time, didn't we, Bev?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
On the 1,075 we have.
yeah. And I believe that I stood as opposing that. I'm going to oppose this too. My problem is that the board made the decision to go with this company to provide these services, and I wasn't here at the time, and so there's not much I can say about that, right? So I would. Is there any other further discussion about these invoices? Was there a motion made at one of the board meetings to approve entering into a contract with Dinsmore?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All in favor of this motion to approve, what was it, 39?
4,302.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. They did what they said they were going to do?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The only other invoice that I see has to do with CGR or GRS. I assume that's for their actuarial work. Is that right?
Yes, that was for the 2 retirement calculations. That equals $700, and then their benefit listing statements. Those are employee estimate statements that are provided once a year to the employees. Okay. We should be receiving those shortly.
Is there a motion that we approve this contract or this invoice by GRS in the amount of $4,700 for actuarial services?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tyler. Second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about this invoice? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Is that all of the invoices then, Beverly?
It is.
Okay, good. What we have some retirement determinations. Let's talk about the refunds of contributions. Do you cover that also, Beverly?
I do, but we don't have any this month.
We have none?
That's correct.
Oh, that'll be an easy one. All in favor of approving? No, never mind. Okay. Let's talk about vacant. I think we're down to number 7, are we not?
We are number 6, retirement calculation.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
We're at number 7, number 6, the retirement applications.
Let's talk about retirement applications.
Okay, we have 3 members of the fund that have retired. Tim Ball chose joint 100% survivor. John Kelly, joint 100% survivor. Jim Southern, joint 100% survivor. And Michael Stone for joint 100% survivor.
And that the total amount of that is what?
They were provided to the board members.
Okay.
It would all be different.
I don't think there is any. I mean, this is part of our contract with our employees, right? So this is what we're all about, is helping our employees that retire. So I would entertain a motion that we accept those retirement applications as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
My gosh, are we a threesome today or what?
I think Charlie's out there somewhere.
No one else is out there? Jeez. Okay. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Let's talk. I've done a lot of my own research in terms of, and a lot of thinking in terms of the filling of vacancies. I think that's one of the reasons that Dinsford was brought into, because there's some discrepancies in how we saw that, right? Am I seeing that right?
Yeah.
And I, based on the information that Bev, you sent me, it looks as though their findings were pretty, stated that the board's, the way the board conducts business for managing its board of directors is consistent with state law, and that the city's policies are pretty much in line. Am I right here?
Well, actually, it's a little different than that. There's a process that as the board has consistently used since the 40s. And there was discussion about changing that process. So Dinsmore was brought on to opine as to, okay, what should the process look like? And that's where that opinion came from.
Okay. Well, were there some changes that they recommended?
So what they suggested was that their opinion was that you, as the city manager, should pick the person to be appointed, and then I'm using some shorthand. Ballots should be sent out to all the members, okay, for their consent as to that particular person. Where it got a little, it was a little iffy. There was a proposal that if you didn't send your consent back, that was an affirmative vote.
Okay.
Dinsmore has some concerns about that. Their recommendation was that there should be an actual affirmative consent, a majority for the board member to be appointed.
Let me give you a summary of this summary that I created, that based on my research, this is what I found, and you let me know if it's in opposition to, because I'm coming into this fairly new, so don't shoot the messenger here. I'm just trying to study this thing out and understand it so I can better serve. Number one, appointments to the board will be made by the city manager with consent of a majority of fund members. It sounds like you just said that.
Yep.
The board does not need to participate in appointing board members. That is not its role under state code. In other words, I present it to the board. There's nothing that says that there has to be an approval to that. I think out of respect, I would do that. I mean, that's me talking. We're all in this together, and I would want to make sure that you have the rest of the board supports what I've done, but it doesn't need to be that way, right? There are 4 appointed positions on the board, plus the city manager who chairs the board. The board members retain they retained a law firm, and we've talked about that already. So I want to make sure that what I'm saying does not stray too far from what we've all come to understand. We have 1 vacant seat and 3 individuals serving: Jeff Ray, Tyler Sickles, and Charlie Nestor. That's correct, right?
Yes.
The city manager will be recommending 1 new appointment for the open term 8/1/2020 through 7/31/2024. That's the vacant one. And I will be recommending that the fund members confirm the appointment of Ray, Sickles, and Nestor, since they were not placed on the board through this process. So we're going to get a full vote. It's going to be ratified by the board, by the general membership, and then we're official. I think that's what's got to happen. That's the process. The city manager will notify the fund members of these appointments and how they can provide their consent to the appointments. I would suggest that we send an email and a notice with employee pay stubs, and the city will work with MUB management to deliver those as needed. I think we get it out as much as we can. I think the greater participation we can have from our membership, the more important that is. We will allow fund members to consent by email, filling out an electronic form, or in writing. The appointment notice will provide instructions. When we have consent from a majority of members, and that means they've actually voted, right? The city manager will notify the appointed member and the board secretary of the appointment. I'd like to ask the city clerk's office to keep track of these records so that we can, from appointment to appointment, that she does that anyway for all of our commissions. Did I say anything that we have not talked about before that is contrary to what you believe are the procedures for completing this process? There's nothing in there. I didn't see anything in there that said if you don't vote, you get an affirmative vote. I think that was a big one.
I think that all makes sense. I see Ryan has joined. I think what Mr. Simonson would say, though, the city council is going to have to adopt that process on behalf of the board, as opposed to the board adopting that process.
Yeah, Jeff, the board, of course, doesn't adopt procedures, but city council doesn't need to adopt a procedure either. The manager can just make these appointments and get a majority consent by the fund members.
That satisfies the state law as well as city policies.
Right. The city council hasn't adopted any separate rules in addition to its ordinance for the board. It's not required to do that, but it has the authority to do so.
Do you, Ryan, do you see anything in what I just outlined that would not be in keeping with kind of the discussions you guys have had, as well as what you would calculate as part of the state law, state code, and procedures?
No, Kim, I agree with that. I think it's pretty straightforward, and we'll get the records in order and move forward.
Any further discussion? But that's the way I'd like to move forward, members of the board, and I want us to be on the same page. This needs to be clean and straightforward, and our members need to participate. I don't know how difficult it's been in the past to fill board positions, but I would hope that our members are taking that pretty darn seriously, because the five of us represent, well, the four of us now represent them and their livelihood, and they've got to trust us, and so it's really important that they have confidence in us. So that's why I think it's important that they actually vote.
I'm not sure if I missed something here. You had said something about the phone was cutting in and out, so I'm not sure if I missed something. You're putting up for nomination for Ray, Tyler, and Nestor to be voted, since it wasn't done properly to begin with.
Yeah, because my understanding, I think we talked about this last time, you three were not; those positions were never formally presented to the membership for a vote, and I want to just make sure we're following same procedures all the time. That's okay. What I.
And so then there will be another one for the vacant position after that.
Actually, once I'm going to make a decision on the appointment of the vacant one, and then I'll present that one along with the three seated board members, and I'll send those four out for approval by the general membership.
Okay.
Did you get that?
I got that. So as far as, is that going to be that's going to be something written up by you that's going to go to all the fund members?
Yes, we will send out the procedure, how we're going to do it, and why it's important that they participate. What I'd like to suggest in that same, when we send this out to the general membership, I think the three of you have staggered terms, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think what we'll do is have them vote on you're completing your staggered term so that we're not all starting at the same time.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense, Bev?
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay. Any questions about that? Is any discussion, any concerns? You know what? I would really like it on record that we're all in agreement in case any of our members think that we're not united on this. I think there's been a lot of discussion. I'd entertain a motion that the chairman the process for filling board positions is outlined by the chairman. And I'm sure that Beverly, if you have any questions about what I've got it written down so I can give you a copy.
Okay, I'd like to attach those to the minutes also, if we could.
I'm sorry?
Would we be able to attach those to the minutes also?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can do that. I think that's important. Based on what I've said and nothing more, nothing less, I'll entertain a motion that we approve those procedures. Any motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Jeff. Second.
Second.
I don't know. You have a choice, Tyler. No one else is. Anyway, I appreciate your support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Onward and upward. That's a good thing. Appreciate you folks and your willingness to serve our employees in such an important. I think about those employees that just retired, and I think what a blessing this program that you manage is to them now. Can you imagine being in their position and not having this opportunity? And so I just take it so seriously that everything we do has such an impact on people's lives. So if at any time you think I'm not representing it, I want you to question me as I'll question you guys. We need to keep each other honest. If you'll do that, I would appreciate it.
That was good.
Oh, right. Let me see here. I believe. There we go. Is there any further business to be brought before the board? And I would entertain a motion, Tyler, to adjourn. I mean, it's.
I will make it.
Gotcha.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.